You are now entering the Honeysuckle Podcast.
So, welcome to the Honeysuckle Podcast. Today we have Micah Sudduth and Keylee Koop-Sudduth.
Nailed it.
Okay. Two filmmakers, actors. You guys are pretty solidly multi-hyphenates, right?
Yeah, we've
We
kind
try.
of become that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we write, we direct, we produce our own stuff, but acting was our first love.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the reason that we're doing this interview today is because you guys are in town with something very exciting. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, last night we premiered 3 episodes of our digital series Backsliders at Tribeca Film Festival. We were a selection of the 2020 program, and they're an awesome festival that actually let us have an in-person event after, the 14 months that passed since. So it was really fun.
Yeah.
And so, possibly, if you don't understand the world of film festivals, Tribeca is gargantuan. I mean, it's what you want to get into. I mean, it's one of, 5 really big American festivos where,
Probably,
you
yeah.
change
Something like
your
that.
career if you...
You hope to. Yeah. It's a good, little feather in your hat.
So, let's talk about... I mean, there's so much drama with getting in and getting out and getting back in. I mean, do you want to tell the story that you told me last night about getting in? That was...
Oh, to the festival itself?
Yeah.
The first time?
Yeah,
because this is the second time we've gotten into the festival.
No, this time the story with your dad, if you don't mind sharing that.
Oh,
that was
yeah. No, so we were in Tijuana when we got the call that we got into Tribeca, and I was there helping my dad kind of hold on to life. He's been battling cancer for probably 6 years at that point. And, the hospitals here were just kind of all but go home and just let him slip away. And he was very not ready for that. He was actually kind of recently married at the time. He was a year into a new marriage. So he was just it just came on really strong at the end. And I think he thought he'd kind of beat it because he had held it off for so long. And it was in a lot of regards, a beatable cancer. It was prostate cancer, but he was essentially going to die, and so my sister and I were like, well, let's do whatever we can. So we found this hospital in Tijuana, Mexico that does Eastern and Western medicine practices, and we took him down there and they got him back on his feet. We showed up on a wheelchair, and probably 6 weeks after we went down there, he was back on his feet walking on his own, and he lived another 2 years, so it was a win-win for us. But while we were there, he had just fallen out of the shower. I had screamed for help for a nurse to come help me pick him up back to his feet and get him back to his bed. Got him back to his bed, and I get a call from Keylee, and she was like, hey, we got into Tribeca. And I was like, awesome, my dad just fell out of the shower, I gotta go. But it was just so weird of this dichotomy of highs and lows in life, and I feel like it keeps happening to us. And it still feels, it's weird to have those highs and lows happen at the same time. But after that, there's this symbol that's become this continual thing that keeps showing up for me, which is a white crane. And I guess right when I got back after he had passed away, we went to the Rose Bowl flea market, and there was this really cool old denim jacket that had embroidery on it, and it had white feathers here, and it had an eagle with white feathers here, and on the back it had a white crane. And I didn't really know the connection, but I was just there's white feathers on all these embroideries. So I looked up what white feathers meant, and it was about continuation of life. And so I was like, oh, wow, did my dad bring this to me? And then last night at the screening, one of the other projects had this random crane in it that they didn't even plan to capture, but they had captured, and it made the cut. And when that image popped up, I started crying because it just made me feel like my dad was saying oh, I'm here, bro.
I didn't even hear that story
Yeah,
last
no,
night.
I
I'm
just-
like tearing up over here.
Yeah, no, I mean, especially if you think about like that crane landing in their shot.
Yeah.
What, 2 years ago?
At least.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just the chances that you would be at that same screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would be the one, yeah.
That's totally wild. So, when did you guys hear that the festival was off? Like, what was that experience
Oh my
like?
gosh.
Because I thought of you guys when it happened. I was just
Yeah.
like,
It was very close to
It was March.
because they were like holding on to hope and like definitely saying like we might do this, you know.
Yeah, we had gotten the email to like book our flights. And so
yeah.
we're like, how long should we stay? And at that point we knew we're probably going to get an email that it's not going to actually happen. But we're like, let's stay the whole time. Let's like keep believing it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I think it was late March, maybe mid-March, which was a bummer, but they postponed, which many other festivals just completely canceled. So they kept that little bit of hope alive, which I feel like is just, it's Tribeca. You know, it was born to bring back the city after 9/11, and
Right.
they are so lovely in just really showing up for filmmakers and helping us feel like they believe in us even when the world is chaotic and we don't know what's happening.
all right, so we were talking about when you knew the festival wasn't going to happen, kind of the emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, it was definitely a bummer because at that point we had shot what's now what we call the prequel to Backsliders in October of 2018 and had submitted that to a lot of festivals as a short, got rejected by a lot of festivals,
This
and
is the way.
right, and
Got to
2019.
take that rejection in stride.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
didn't let it stop us. We knew we wanted to keep developing and experimenting with the idea of the show, which, for those who don't know, our series Backsliders is an exploration of a couple deconstructing their fundamental religious beliefs and figuring out how to truly be themselves. So anyway, we shot the short in 2018, and then in 2019 we shot over 4 weekends, and we now have 13 episodes. But needless to say, it's been a very long journey.
Yeah.
And we were so excited when we found out we got in 2020, and then coronavirus. So that was really hard. Just a big bummer, but
Just for us though.
yeah,
You know,
only
like-
for us. We were really the only people affected. But at this, we had to take stock of, all of the madness that was actually going on. But we're very grateful to the festival for making this happen
Yeah.
14 months later. And
Yeah, so many
including
other
us.
festivals, it was just like, it's canceled, sorry.
Yeah.
And so it was very fortunate, like, they held on to a postponement for a while. I think they thought they were going to just do another, like, 2020 at a later date, but then at some point it just got so late, they were like, we're just going to combine them.
Yeah.
Which is really amazing and supports the filmmakers and,
Yeah.
and is awesome.
Yeah.
So, between the two of you, which gets more embarrassed watching yourself masturbate on the big screen?
Spoiler. I feel like it's me, but I don't know what's going on for
Are
you
you more
internally.
comfortable masturbating on the big screen?
Well, are you actually masturbating?
Let's hope.
Right.
Okay.
No?
No?
Let's hope. Realism. No, I was more like, what's the word? Just like, this is so stupid. Why did I do this to myself?
Yeah.
Like, maybe less embarrassment, just like, what was I thinking?
We joke about it a lot, and you snuck up right when our
Yeah. No,
episode
I've got a
started.
picture of your face at Tribeca watching yourself masturbate.
Yeah,
Where we were
just
just like-
very squirmy.
Yeah.
Yeah, never thought I'd be masturbating on camera. I mean, I was acting, I wasn't actually doing it. But and then I'm like, oh, we did this to ourselves. Like, we didn't get cast in this. We actually wrote it. But I think it's so important to be revealing as an artist and to not be afraid to go there. And when you make your own shit, you're making it with your friends. So in the room, even though it was super scary when we made it, there was also like a sense of comfort. And I think people have liked it so far. I don't know.
Yeah.
It hasn't
was-
been like humiliating and regretful. So that's
Yeah,
good.
nobody has shamed us for it. Although I will say, before we came here, we've been carrying this project for like 2 years without releasing it. So it's like made it even heavier, I guess, in a way.
You guys have been edging, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And our DP was like, yeah, you know, like, y'all ready to like masturbate on camera in front of people? And we're like, sure, yeah. And he's like, 3 times.
And we had forgotten that. In my
that.
mind, it was just one time. Okay, just like get through that one time. But no, our prequel episode opens and ends, and yeah, there's 2 scenes at the top. Yeah, a lot of touching ourselves.
Yeah, well, that's good. Well, I mean, it is good for you.
It's healthy.
And it's something that in that community you would have been told is terrible.
Right.
And
Shameful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when in real life it's a part of a normal, healthy sexual life.
A balanced diet.
Yeah. Balanced diet.
Maybe they can talk about that community. 'Cause I don't
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously going to get into that. So you guys both come from, would you describe it as a fundamentalist background, or you guys come from uber churchy?
Well, we both have very different stories. I grew up, my mom's side of the family is Catholic, but I think I blocked out a lot of going to Catholic Mass. I think we did it when I was younger, and then when my parents divorced, it became less of a thing. But I remember the guilt and shame feeling coming on very strong, very early. I apparently was a colicky baby, and my mom couldn't figure out how to get me to stop crying, and she checked my body for marks of the devil, thinking maybe that was it. So just that kind of reasoning is definitely present in my family, and which is very weird. And then when I was in high school and needed like a sense of stability, because my mom's also bipolar and just not very stable, especially when I was a teenager, I got invited to this mega church. And it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced, like a coffee shop, like a big show, and just people like learning your name and like really kind of love bombing you.
Learning your name.
So I gave like my whole, teenage years dedicated to that church. I worked on the production team and the worship team, and it did give me like a sense of a community and belief in myself that I didn't have. But along with that, a lot of rules and regulations and just like they were trying to box everyone in. Especially I felt that as a woman, like I wanted to be a performer, and it's like, oh, you can only be a performer for God in the church, and it just didn't make sense. And so I got out of that eventually.
So you went the mega church route.
Yeah.
We know that at some point you played Jesus.
I did. In
So what
college.
was your Jesus experience?
Leading up to it, or just the experience?
No, just
of
like
playing?
what was your kind of background?
Well, my parents came from a movement in the 70s called the Way, which, there is probably a large group of Christians that would consider it a cult, and I would consider it a cult. It, had a charismatic leader that was abusing women and thought they had the only correct translation of the Bible, and a couple specific beliefs that like no mainstream Christian would believe, which were, they didn't believe in the Trinity in the traditional sense of, Father, Son, the Holy Spirit are all the same thing. They believed they were very separate, like Jesus was just a man who was the Son of God, and that was just very important to them for whatever reason.
Because they got it right.
Because they got it right.
Yeah.
So like even within the Christian community growing up, like I was still an outsider even within the Christian world. Like I couldn't, like I would go to my friends' churches and would be in my head being like, that's wrong. You know what I mean? Like just like alt Christian. So I think that made it even maybe easier for me to kind of like start questioning some of the dogma as a kid. Just be like, y'all are so like opposed to what the majority of Christians believe, and our movement isn't even that big. Like I don't really have a community. So I think it was easy for me to kind of start deconstructing a lot of beliefs early on. But when I was in college, I did get involved in like I would say a non-denominational charismatic church, still charismatic, and kind of gave a lot of time and energy into it. And then I got into the theater program, and then of course it was like, what are you doing? Why would you do this? So that was also kind of just like, I don't know if I really need this community that's very, it still has like it's like cultic, like tribal tendencies. I think that happens in a lot of just any kind of group that gets together, but it just doesn't appeal to me. Even now, like even comedic groups or film, even film communities, sometimes I'm like a little bit like standoffish because I feel I'm just like I'm just weary. I'm just weary of it all.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that like definitely, you know, as an outsider, you know, they say no one joins a cult. You join a group of really wonderful people who happen to be a cult. Like you don't join a cult, you find yourself eventually in one.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
they may never even intended to be one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no one starts a cult either. You know, no one starts
I think there's sociopaths out there.
Some, yeah.
But so when you have this awakening, right? That eventually you start moving away from it. Is this like an aha light bulb moment where you're like, "Whoa, bro," or is this like a series of thoughts and evenings and conversations with people where eventually you're like, I think I'm gonna kind of go in a slightly different direction?
It's so slow. I think it's so slow, and it's drugs, and you know, it's conversations with a therapist, and it's conversations with people that you were probably told to be afraid of or think is going to hell, and just being like, no, I don't think you're going to hell at all, and I don't even know if I believe in hell. And
there's this quote, I think it's talking about maybe going into debt or whatever, but it's like slowly at first and then all at once, and I think that applies to both of us and a lot of people that we've talked to who have stepped away from fundamental religion. It's not, a lot of times it's not one moment, it's just like all these tiny things adding up, and these moments where you feel just confused by people choosing to separate themselves from others or trying to put you in a box or make you feel like the God that they believe in and you are trying to believe in wants you to be different than who you are, or others to be different than who they are. To me it was just like a lot of moments of just like my gut being like, oh, that doesn't feel right. It feels like if there is like a higher power, it shouldn't be about separating, and should be more about like what connects us, and didn't really find that in religion.
Yeah, because I think like the Hollywood version, you know, in my mind is that moment of like, God damn it, I'm in a cult, you got me. You know what I mean? But whereas like I think about my own relationship to religion, I actually got more into it towards the later side of high school. And so coming into college, you know, I thought about theology, I thought about that kind of stuff, the same kind of, what am I doing with my life kind of thing. And there was an attraction, and I'm not from that kind of group. I was from an Episcopal family, you know, which is Catholic light, nothing crazy, you know what I mean? They like to drink, that's about it, you know what I mean? But it was that immersion in college and having people tell me, you're an idiot, like, the religion you were born into that like is 2 blocks from your house was the right one.
Right.
That was the one where if you had a potato launcher, you could hit the building from your front lawn. That was the correct one. Everybody else is,
how lucky for you.
Is full of
and
shit.
Don't question anything. Don't look into it. Just like nod and smile. And
and then I met my future roommate, who was a philosophy student, and introduced me to nihilism, solipsism, and a lot of the stuff that I still think about now. That nothing really has an answer. It's just kind of fun to to think about or whatever.
I don't know anything about solipsism.
Solipsism's basically, and I'm gonna butcher this, but the only thing I can know that it exists is me. I don't know if you're real because I have no proof of it. The only proof that I have is that I'm real.
Well, how do you know you're real?
Just because you know it. I mean, and again, that would be a part of solipsism. That whole, consideration.
You could touch me.
You can touch yourself.
But then there's all sorts of reasons why that's not real and whatever. People love to get into that. And then obviously, nihilism. There's that attraction in nihilism because it is nothingness, where it's there is no meaning. We've assigned all of it. You know what I mean? It's a very depressive thought. But it also holds a lot of water. Where it's like when you really look around, you're like, why am I doing this? It's like, well, because my brain squirts the happy juice when I do it. I'm still just doing the happy juice squirt, but it's for, a different reason than I used to do it. Versus just like looking at things and being like, well, there is no real inherent meaning to this wood floor or my consciousness or this conversation or the universe or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an attractive proposition when I was
Yeah.
younger, and it still kind of is. I mean, I think it's also arguable, a lot of the stuff or whatever.
Sure.
So where do you guys come down on faith now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, just I don't know. I'm way more comfortable saying I don't know. I still have a lot of questions. I definitely believe in something, but I don't know if I can articulate it. But I've been in the room when like life has entered this world. I've been in the room when my best friend from childhood has had 2 children, and I've been in the room when Micah's father passed away, and you know, we create, and I feel like the same thing happens that I can't articulate, but it's like a soul.
A soul connection.
A soul connection, to be
Which
cheesy.
happened to be the showcase yesterday.
Last night. And I'm just becoming more and more comfortable saying, I don't know, but I know that I feel deeply connected to something that I can't articulate, and I think that's fine with me now.
What about you?
Similarly, I don't know if I ever was an atheist, just because it just felt just as confidently assured as the religions I knew. So I couldn't subscribe to that. So I for the longest time I was just like, I'm just agnostic, and I just don't know, and I'm okay with that. And that feels like a faith that is real, because I'm not saying I know, which doesn't feel like faith anymore. It feels like knowing.
Yeah. I think that something, Rooney at this point is sick of hearing about it, but I'm really into proto-humans right now, cave people, essentially.
Yeah.
And one of these things that happened was we became modernly spiritual when we became anatomically modern humans. You know what I mean? Like, there's a history of the Homo genuses burying up to like 1.5 million years ago, so that's something we've been doing for a while, which is crazy to think about too. That our non-human ancestors were burying their dead, like, but they're still pretty much monkey people. Like that's crazy. So this stuff is wired into us. You know what I mean? This spirituality, this connection between things that might not have connections, but maybe they do. So you can imagine being on the plains of Africa, and the things that you're doing, you're imagining, are affecting what you're killing when it's raining, that kind of stuff. So that's where we come from, is this pattern recognition machine that's in our brain. And then on top of that, you throw, modern life and organized religions, which are just meth. You know what I mean? They're just made to be as addictive and as, and as just unget-outable as possible. And it's not a surprise these people get into these, kind of situations. So what do you guys think about the word cult? Because
I'll use it pretty broadly.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it definitely conjures up like the white robes and the Kool-Aid and stuff like that.
Those are the cool ones.
Yeah, exactly.
The scarier ones are the ones we don't know we're in.
Yeah.
Right.
And I remember going through this whole Trump era and just looking at the opposite side politically and just being like, bro, listen to yourself.
Wake up.
You're in a cult. And then I was like, well, and then the mass shootings started back up again. And I was like, well, what's a bigger cult than the Republican Party? The American cult. The cult of America.
Yeah.
And
we're number one.
Yeah, but you don't know the cults that you're in.
Yeah.
And to have someone say that you're in one, of course, you're like, oh, I'm not in it. I mean, anybody who is watching this or listening to this right now, if I'm telling you you're in a cult, and that cult is the country that you live in, you know what I mean? Everybody's going to be like, that's bullshit. It's ridiculous. And then you think about some of the values.
You anti-American?
Yeah, but it's just like, oh, yeah, we definitely all need guns. Then you're like, huh? Why do we all need guns? You're like, wait, nobody else does this. Why are we doing this? It's because we're in a cult.
Yeah.
But how did you guys kind of deal with that in your own personal lives?
Oh, interesting. I definitely, when I was involved in the megachurch in high school, there was like, because I really did change kind of overnight and being like, oh, well, I have to do this, and I go to church on Wednesdays, and I can't watch One Tree Hill, and like, like very intense megachurch, no secular music all of a sudden, because I was trying to be like what I thought God wanted me to be, and people in school were definitely saying I was in a cult, and of course I was like, no, I'm not. now I do look back on that time period, and I definitely had a cult-like mindset, which I feel like now I would maybe say like blind allegiance is a huge key in what a cult is. I know there's like, if you look up the definition, there's a lot of like rules that maybe technically Christianity or the church I was involved in wouldn't fall under that category, but it's that feeling of unquestionable loyalty and allegiance and just kind of accepting whatever's being taught in that space as truth without, it's kind of outsourcing your brain. That
Or at
seems
least
culty.
your spiritual pursuit. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
You're not allowed to necessarily buck authority. Seems like a tenet of
Which
a cult.
should be a red flag. Like if
Yeah.
someone's telling you, and that is a large part of Christianity that really does not sit well with me, this whole, like, what is it, faith beyond reasoning, or, you know, all of these quotes, scripture quotes that they use to try to tell you, like, that question that you're asking, you know, it's about faith. It's about loyalty and faith, which just, we have brains. Why, if you believe in a God, would you believe that that deity wouldn't want us to use our brains to think and question and analyze?
I think that it's not necessarily like comfortable to like challenge your belief system though. It is very
No.
uncomfortable, and it's like not comforting, and it's the opposite of what they're offering. Is like, hey, you know, you're okay, you're always going to be okay, and you're going to go to heaven if you just like kind of consistently ask for forgiveness. And you know, I think that having gratitude and asking for forgiveness for you know, hurting your fellow man is a beneficial like mental thing, but being afraid of God, you know, fear God is like a sticker that like we saw everywhere growing up. It's
My
like on
dad
the
wore a
back of-
shirt, real men fear God.
Yeah.
He's a piece of shit. But the shirt would say, oh, he's a real man who's a good Christian man. Yeah.
Which is just virtue signaling.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the other part of organized religions, which is controlling women's bodies.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what was your experience like with that? Because it's a big part of organized religion is controlling
Yeah.
women's bodies.
It's so crazy because I just got a box of my childhood things, and I have a couple journals from that time in my life, and I was just like flipping through them, like notes that I took in church, and just happened to glance at me writing down some scripture that was talking about submission, and like, you know, they try to make it seem like really shiny and glossy, and this is like a beautiful thing, and it's an example like of how to show your love for God is to like submit yourself. And so I think looking back when I was there, it was probably like some gut check moments where things were being taught that didn't feel right. But again, I think because I was so young and naive, and in those environments where someone's on stage like speaking confidently, I just kind of tried to like wrap my head around it and think that, oh, this person's presenting God, so maybe they have some truth to say. But also, a part of my story is that when I was involved in that megachurch, I ended up being groomed by a male leader when I was there. We met when I was 15. He was part of my small group, which is like a smaller group of youth group people that hang out weekly. And there weren't any protections in place for me. And now, obviously, that is like a huge problem across every sect of Christianity. Is there's this, why are they so uncomfortable acknowledging abuse and acknowledging overstepping bounds for girls and women? So my mom, I don't know, I have a lot of questions. My mom's very pro-life. I'm very pro-choice. And I looking back, I'm so like, I feel so much for all of the young girls who are teens who are being influenced by this, and their heart is like so good. They want to do the right thing. They want to like have a belief in a God. They want to be who they're supposed to be, and they're just being told to be small, to be submissive, to be controlled, and just accept it because that's what this book says, which this book was put together by a bunch of men. And I could talk about it. It's all fucked.
Yeah.
Was
No.
he prosecuted or anything, or like?
No, I didn't. At the time, I didn't like come forward and like report it in any like real way other than like in the church. And I feel like I'm still processing it. But I know this happens to so many girls, and it enrages me. And I think that is a part of the reason why we're seeing such like a large mass exodus, because people, especially younger and younger generations, they're not going to put up with that. Like, it's not okay, and we're not going to just stay in an environment because we're told to stay in an environment.
Yeah, I mean, the exodus is like what they were afraid of and why they probably hid everything that they've been hiding all these years. Like, I don't think any of this is new. It's just being exposed more, and that is scaring off people, I'm sure. But it's if they want to reconcile and ask for forgiveness from these communities and rebuild some sort of religion, and I'm not like rooting for that, but it's the only way forward. Just like you got to be truthful, you got to be honest. You can't be hiding these things out of fear of being held accountable. Like that, it's like counterintuitive to the religion you're trying to.
But so much about that same religion is counterintuitive. I mean, I think that
cognitive dissonance.
The circularity of some of the logic and some of the things that like this is totally okay and this is not okay, and you're like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. It's
how much is it really rooted in religion, and how much is it or spirituality or a relationship with God, and how much is it, political, and not just like modern politics, but like King James era politics of like, why were these things,
which books got selected, which got put in, and we have much history of books that are just as authentically from the period as Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and they were like, yeah, we're not putting that one in.
Right.
We're definitely not putting that one in.
Yeah.
So I have a question. How did you guys like handle, deal with your families and stuff? Like,
like currently?
A lot of anger. I don't know. Like, if you grow out of it, you're like, why did you teach me this stuff? Even though I'm sure they truly believe it.
Oof.
Well, my mom has probably been the most consistent with her beliefs. And no, there are times where I just avoid talking to her about it, or I let her talk, and I don't really respond just to avoid a confrontation. But sometimes I will respond, and it like really upsets her. She's not super stable either, so I don't. I think I avoid it. My dad, on the other hand, his faith has really evolved over the course of his life. When I was a kid, he was very, very, very biblically based and wanting me to live, according to this like alt Christianity. But towards the end of his life, he no longer believed in hell, which is like, nobody would consider him a Christian anymore.
Yeah.
So, but I guess there is like the universalist Christian, which is like what I would say he kind of became. He kind of became New Agey in a way. Which I really appreciated, allow us to connect in a lot more ways, to where it was like, it's so less about fighting over the text and so much more about going inward and having that conversation or communion with what possibly is a higher being or a higher self, or maybe the same.
Yeah.
Let's jump into creativity, because you guys are obviously got creativity coming out your ears. What's your guys' creative process as you're working together?
Yeah.
What's that like?
I feel like we're all constantly trying to figure it out, and it's different with each process.
That's
I feel
also
that
true.
like personally, and I think we also feel that way together. We like to collect a lot of data, and for our projects, because we have pulled a lot from our real lives. Like, this project's semi-autobiographical.
You guys use your own names.
We use our own names. We decided to do that because why the hell not? So we gather for a period of time, just like it could be anything, like a piece of dialogue, an awkward situation that we're in, like a character, an observation. So we compile, and then we like to put things on note cards. We have like a really big cork board. I really like that. I think Micah enjoys that as well. Just visually being able to like step away and see it, and kind of step into the story and put it together like a puzzle. So we work with the cork board, and then we'll go into final draft and outline, and then we go back and trade. Once we are writing scenes, we'll trade back and forth. Yeah, but it's different every single time, and it never feels comfortable. I mean, I don't know if it ever will. Yeah. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that we also like to find stuff on the day. You know, I think we like to write something that we'd be happy to have as is, but then when we roll camera, it's like we know that magic is in the moment, and so as long as we're on topic and as long as we're not rambling, you know, you might have that take. Sometimes it infuriates us, or maybe more so me. Whereas like we're in a scene and we're like, it just feels bad. And so we'll have to like step away and be like, hey, like what's going on? Like, why aren't we being humans right now? Like, why are we being actors? So like that's the challenge for us as like directors that are also in the scene is like, hey, like I can sense that you're kind of just like phoning it in, maybe not phoning it in, but like maybe you're not connected to this dialogue we wrote. Like, can we come up with something better, or can we ask a question in the scene that that works better better for the moment?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is something that I've developed, actually more recently than not. I took up painting during Corona. And a lot of times I've smoked beforehand. But that creative flow, one of the ways that I describe it is as a connection to God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I am the last person to talk about God.
Yeah.
Like, I am, science is my religion in probably some bad ways. You know what I mean? If you want to talk about cults. But
Right, yeah.
that's who I am as a person. And it's like when I'm making art, and you know what I do when it's happening? I say hi to God. Because I'm just like, hey, what's up? You know what I mean? It's just like that brief moment where you get that connection to that thing that feels like this like third rail, just live wire, and it's just like it feels so fucking real when it's happening. And so I guess that's my creativity is kind of how I find God, but it's
Absolutely.
it's in this weird backwards way, but it's through the art that kind of happens. What would you guys say is, you know, those creative moments, you know, those the ineffable, the lightning in a bottle kind of thing? Like what's your guys' relationship when that stuff's happening on set?
Ooh, I relate to so much of what you just said. With Backsliders particularly, we wanted to leave room for the magic that occurs like with improv. I definitely feel, again, with the gut thing in a beautiful way, when we're able to be present with each other, there's like a spark of magic that definitely feels like a soul, like a God connection. And I think it's all about, for us, just creating that space of safety and security so we can kind of surrender to that moment and let what happens not be pre-planned and to just be, you know, I don't know, present.
No, I feel like when we're writing and then when we're, you know, planning for production, it's like we're just like setting the stage for God to show up. But I've never said that before, you know. But
okay, guys, we're gonna have breakfast. We're gonna light block, and then God's gonna show up.
Let God enter.
But you know, sometimes you're like, oh, what's where is this, like, this muse? Where's this thing that's gonna like really make this scene better than what was on the page? You're just like planning to orchestrate this. You know, it's like a jam session that's like, we wrote the song, and then we get together, and then it's like, whoa. That's what like a good scene or a good take feels like, and you're like, and that's why editing becomes like the arrangement of those God moments, you know, like the arrangement of, oh yeah, God is showing up in this scene. But no, I don't think about that. But if I do right now, it is that for sure.
How are you guys comfortable talking about plant medicine at all?
For sure, yeah.
Do you use cannabis or
Yeah,
other things?
we've we use a lot of cannabis in our
I
day.
love cannabis.
We've done a lot of stuff. We've done ayahuasca. I would say that I didn't really believe in God for many years. Like I said, I wasn't an atheist. It was just I don't know. I don't have any evidence of. And then ayahuasca was like, I think this might be evidence of.
So I was looking for a sledgehammer and I found it at the bottom of a tea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that definitely connected me to a literal download, a conversation. There was no words, but a lot of information exchanged with what felt like a God being.
What did he say, or she?
It definitely felt like a she.
Of course.
And
Not surprising.
there was a moment that I was taken to the edge of the universe, from the earth to the edge of the universe, and it was just kind of to reveal how insignificant my worries are on this planet in the grand scheme of things, and how time isn't really my time here on Earth is very insignificant. Not in a way that made me feel insignificant, but made me feel more comfortable with my place and piece of this greater thing, and that there was probably going to be a time that's where I would be, and I would be just completely free from worry and just in that presence, which I feel does tie into religions of Christianity and beyond, where the afterlife is just in the presence of God because you are God. So that was kind of the sentiment I came back with of oh, okay, I can chill out. Have I practiced that with perfection? No.
Yeah.
But you still carry it with you.
Yeah. I can still recall that feeling.
Yeah. I had a beautiful ayahuasca experience as well. I didn't see anything visually, but I felt like I was in the womb. And I got one message, and it was just, you've never been alone because you've always been with you. And I come back to that message all of the time. And I don't think I'm aware of it when it happens, but that truth feels very much like the same thing that's happening when I am in a creative flow. Just this kind of trust in myself and in my higher self and in my creativity, which has really, since I was a kid, and I did go through some childhood trauma as well, has always been my way of escaping and transporting myself to a place where I feel like the safest and most alive. And cannabis does that for me as well. I love it. I feel like it helps me quiet the noise of my insecurities and my fears and this overwhelm that's always in the back of my mind, and just lets me take a breath and trust that my creativity is sacred, and the time that I spend in that space is a holy place, and I'm worthy of that,
Is that card full? Is that what happened?
No.
I think it's full. The Gaspar interview's on that card, and I just didn't want to erase it, even though I've got on 6 different drives, right? The usual shuffle.
Who's Gaspar?
Noé, the director of Irreversible and Climax and a bunch of other. He's a French filmmaker. But
Wow.
we flew to Paris and did an interview of him.
Oh, wow.
And he's one of our favorite filmmakers, and
That's
it's
so
just
cool.
and it's but it's on that card, and it's again, even though I know I've got it backed up.
You don't wanna
I don't want to
Yeah.
read it.
Gaspar was the name of the shaman that sang Icarus while we did ayahuasca for the first time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Something else that's interesting about ayahuasca, the core chemical DMT that's in it, is the only psychedelic chemical that our body naturally produces too. That's part of the other thing. Between the endocannabinoid system of you just have an extra set of organs in your body, and there's more of them in your brain than there are of neurons, and it only works with these couple of cannabinoids, you know what I mean? And you're oh, what? And then it's like, oh, and your brain makes fucking DMT. You walk
Yeah.
around with it in there all the day, and you're like,
So wild.
what? You're like, oh, okay, maybe. I mean, obviously they shouldn't be illegal, but additionally, it's like, maybe we need to start taking this stuff really seriously if it's a part of our body.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a part of how we're designed. It's part of our everyday. Now we don't have all the answers to all of it yet.
Right.
Okay, we did.
Did cannabis kind of help you let go of some of the programming? Or...
I think it was that for me because I was so fearful and anxious. I was so afraid of weed. Like, I never smoked it in high school, obviously, because I was like super religious. And even in college, I was just very weary of this thing that I didn't understand at all, that I think I kind of bought into the classic, like, this is going to open up all these doors of all these things that are going to ruin your life.
You'll be a heroin addict by the end of the week.
Yeah. And then we moved to LA, and I had started doing some therapy, and I think just, unpacking all of these things that I realized I was taught.
Well, my dad started
that's
doing
true.
cannabis treatment, and I think that opened her up to like, oh, okay, like Micah's dad, who's a preacher, is like doing cannabis. My dad was in Vietnam, so he had plenty of years doing cannabis, but when he was ordained and became a minister, he stopped, like he definitely taught me to not do cannabis. Although I did, like in high school was my exposure to it, and it was definitely like an escape from some of that probably like emotional, spiritual trauma that I was kind of navigating. And in some ways, I think I associated it with like, no, this is the closest I've ever been to God.
Yeah, for real.
It's like high school high is a different high, like it's very new and it's very otherworldly. You're like, yes, yeah, man.
Yeah. But I also think like a big part of cannabis is just, for whatever reason, your brain is finally like, I am going to let you connect point A and point B. They're totally not related. They're from different parts of your life. They're from different parts of your brain. But go ahead, connect A and B. And then you're like, oh, what if this? And you're like, oh, well, then yeah. And it's just like when you're not high or whatever, your brain works in the usual work-a-day, go to the bank kind of mindset. And your brain is not willing to reach out and connect A and B and have those, possible big breakthroughs or, have that aha moment where and it's hard to say, like, people love the phrase less inhibitions, right? You drink alcohol, you have less inhibitions. And you do have less inhibitions with cannabis, but the inhibitions that we're talking about are kind of like the bullshit ones. Like, am I wearing the right shirt? Am I doing the right thing? Did I say the right thing? And then, like, or at least, cannabis for me, I smoke that and I'm just like, oh, I'm so much more relaxed.
It releases us from the modern world that we're not necessarily supposed to be living in.
We're really definitely not supposed to be doing this.
I feel like it helps me hear my voice, like my actual voice, the voice beyond like the insecurities and the am I going to look or sound or appear stupid, because, the part of my brain that makes me convinced that everyone is just obsessed with me and trying to figure out what's wrong with me, because everyone's doing that with themselves, actually.
Yeah.
It helps me, like, drown out all that bullshit noise and, like, tap into the truth, which is that, I'm here now, so might as well make something with it.
Yeah.
We've also, plant medicines. We've done our fair share of like microdosing LSD and mushrooms, like just like chunks, like not always, but we'll have like a couple of weeks where like we're gonna like microdose every 2 or 3 days, just like get in like this like reset. We haven't done a lot of deep dives. I have done some deep dives with mushrooms and thoroughly enjoyed those.
Yeah.
We've never done a full dose of like LSD. We've always just microdosed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that was the first time I did mushrooms, which were actually technically truffles because we were in Amsterdam. I remember seeing people's auras, these big colorful trails or whatever. And not that like I thought, oh, I'm now finally seeing reality. Everybody has auras. But it was just like, oh, we're definitely not seeing everything. In my everyday life, I am definitely not seeing things how they objectively are outside of this human consciousness seeing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just knowing that fact down into your soul, I feel like is important, is that this shit that you're seeing right now is like the TV version of reality. You're not able to touch and feel and identify everything that we're going through. And psychedelics definitely like are just that like
Gate
kick in the
openers,
door, and they're just like, reality is not what you thought it is.
Yeah.
And that's not like, it's not an uncomfortable feeling. You're just like, oh, okay, thanks for updating me. Like, reality is not what I thought it was right now.
Yeah.
So long-term projects for you guys. You guys have a penchant for episodic serial? Do you like features? Do you like pornography? Like, what are you guys doing, or kind of the arc that you would like?
Yeah, I think one of our big dreams is to have our own TV show that we write on and are also in, and maybe one day, we'll be able to show run. We'd love to direct some episodes as well. But we also want to venture into features. Right now we're developing a couple TV show ideas that we hope to go out and pitch that we're not going to be attached to as actors. And then when we get home, we've been talking while we're here about the feature that we want to make. Because we have been making a lot of serialized stuff, and I think because we don't have a background in filmmaking, we didn't go to film school, that was our way of like dipping our toes into feeling comfortable. Like the first series we made is 85 minutes broken down into 6 episodes. And so we essentially made like a small feature, but I don't know if we would have felt that we could have made a feature.
Right, yeah. Well, it was the goal. We were like, we want to work on learning how to write narrative, and we want to learn how to write serialized episodic TV, because we did like the next goal is we want to write a 30-minute show, or we want to write an hour show.
Yeah.
So it definitely served us in what we intended it to do, and I think we still want to make a 30-minute version of like Backsliders. And we do have other ideas that we wouldn't have to be in. But I think the project that we will make next, and be willing to like put all of our energy towards, will be a feature, just because that really is a big goal of ours, is to make a feature.
Yeah, and we finally feel ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like the lifetime goal, we want to be like the Duplass brothers. Like we want to do it all. We want to work in TV and film. We want to help produce
Phoebe
Waller-Bridge. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Issa Rae.
Yeah, and I think that that's becoming more what the people, the headhunters, are looking for, is the kind of polymathy kind of, you do something over here, you do something over here.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I mean, things were incredibly rigid. If you worked in TV, you were either a comedy or a drama writer.
Yeah.
They're like that way, and I still work with writers who, like, when you hear them chit chat with each other, they're like, "Yeah, I was in drama for a while, and then I did a little bit of comedy there," and it's just like those like very delineated kind of things. And now it's like, we want to do some long form serial storytelling, we want to do some feature storytelling.
Yeah.
So okay, where can we find your guys' stuff right now?
Yeah, you can watch. I think we have 7 episodes currently released of Backsliders. The easiest way is to search Backsliders series on YouTube, or you can go to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Bob Billiams Productions. That's the name of our production company. It's like Williams, but with a B, because we made the name up, just like we made the production company up, and we thought it was funny. It's actually kind of hard to explain. It's becoming less and less funny the more we have to explain it.
It's like one of those emails that like you did the email and you thought it was like really clever at the time, and then you're on the phone with someone in India and you're like
constantly
SV
always.
underscore. You're like, I fucking hate this email address.
It's always Williams or Billions. They're like, Bob Billions?
Yeah.
No.
Billiams.
Like
You're
Williams with a B. So Williams? No.
Yeah.
But if you want to go to bobbilliams.com,
yes,
there's all of our work there. You can find links to all of our work.
We have an Instagram account for our production company at the Bob Billiams, and Backsliders has an account too at Backsliders Show with 2 S's in the middle.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Sam, do you want to grab an issue and show everyone the
Keylee and
latest
Micah?
issue?
Oh, yeah.
It'll be on
This is.
Oh.
Is that what you're talking about?
I mean, just like to tell, since this is going to be on YouTube, like, hey, get our issue.
Oh, sure,
issue that's
sure.
out, yeah.
So, Lil Wayne issue out now. You can find it on Honeysuckle's shop.
HoneysuckleMag.com.
HoneysuckleMag.com.
Yeah.
Speaking of film, we have Gaspar Noé in there, who is a pretty iconic filmmaker.
Sweet.
Next to Lil Wayne.
Boosh.
Sick. This is just beautiful.
It is cool.
We got our first copy last night. So thrilled to have.
Yeah, we were flipping through it.
Yeah. Congrats, y'all.
Thanks for
you.
being a part of our podcast.
Of
It's
course. Anytime.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, fun.
Thank you.
guys.